As part of Mental Health Week in 2020, the Fellowship of Australian Writers Queensland sat down with people from different backgrounds to discuss how the creative art of writing helped build resilience in their life. Anthony Hanna, firefighter at Brisbane Airport, who regularly features in the firefighters calendar, was once the Critical Incident Response Team negotiator for Victoria Police. His memoir, It's Your World, I'm Just Living in It, was recently published. And Anthony begins by explaining how he came to write his book.
So what led me to write the book? I'd moved to Queensland and probably didn't know how much my identity was caught up with the police force once I moved to the fire brigade. And I found myself talking a lot about the past to the point where I went to a Bucks party, and one of my mates, I sort of was telling a few stories, and before I knew it I had a whole crowd asking me more and more police stories. And then one of them said, "You should write these down and write a book." And I thought I wanted to write a book, but I didn't want just story after story. I wanted to have more than that. And it probably took me 2 attempts to write the book. I started writing different ideas and different concepts, and because of the issues I was having in my mind with mental illness or mental health, I did a lot of research, and I suppose I started writing about other people's ideas, and that was probably going away from what I knew, and what I did know was me, and I'm an expert on me, so I needed to write about me. Otherwise I was just turning up or churning up someone else's ideas. So that's basically how it started. So yeah, I thought I'd just write it about my issues and how it's got some highs and lows, but how I've been able to come through the other side.
So was your diagnosis of OCD an important reason for the book?
Yeah, I think I had a really unique experience. There's not too many people that talk about OCD, and there's not many people that. A lot of people say they have it because they might wash their hands a little bit, but I don't think it's the debilitating state that I had mine. So I thought it was probably important to get it out there and be brave enough to put it out there. Because of the obsessive compulsive disorder, I had an interesting story about how I got into the police force and how long it took, which ended up being 5.5 years. But OCD gives you a determination and a tenacity and relentlessness.
So it really makes you focus on the goal.
Absolutely, it makes you hyper-focus on a goal and hyper-focus on an outcome. And for me, it made me not quit.
Yeah. Because you write in the book about how you really struggled at school.
Yep.
It was a period of time where you, and I think you described getting your Year 12 certificate as by just turning up.
Yep.
So do you want to talk a little bit about how you got into the police force? And you said it took 5 years.
Yeah, so I did a lot of athletics. Athletics was sort of my saviour to calm my mind through high school. So I was always turning up to training sessions and doing all that. But getting to school was difficult because I might, for instance, a button-up shirt, I might do it up and undo it. You know, it wouldn't be unusual to do it 32 times. Following that, you're a bit of an emotional mess. Your head's a bit out of where it shouldn't supposedly be. So getting to school was quite difficult. So I missed a large period of school because of that. Because of that, I suppose my academic studies probably failed a little bit, and I didn't read or anything as much as I should. So my spelling wasn't the greatest. In the Victoria Police entrance exam, there's a spelling test. And I found there was 1,000 words you'd be tested on. In the test, there's 30 words, and I was lucky enough to get 5. So I had a bit of work to do.
That was the first test?
The first test, yeah. So I went away from that getting 5 out of 30 and pretty demoralised. So I went and studied, put my OCD mind to the test and wrote out each word 1,360 times, which over the 1,000 ended up being 1,360,000 words. I was writing about 8 pages per word and probably eight words a day. So it took me about 4 hours a day, day in, day out, just to pass that test, and which I failed the second time, but not the spelling, and eventually the third time got it all right.
Right. So that ability to be able to write those words and memorise the words, part of that came from, you think, from the fact that your mind was so focused on it?
Absolutely. So with OCD, for me, it always worked in a certain amount of numbers. Like mine might be 4. So if I don't turn the lights off and on 4 times, something would happen to my mum. Normally ill health sort of thing.
So that was the fear.
That was the fear
of something happening to somebody who you love.
Yeah. And then I started to think, when I was doing the words, the same thing would happen. If I don't write this word 5 times per line, per 8 pages, this will happen. So I was just relentless in getting those reps out. And if you write a word that many times, you can't help not remember how to spell it. So it's just a lot of,
In the book, you talk about how you had a lot of speed when you began athletics. And although you didn't like the event, the 400 metres was your most successful event. Can you explain how it felt to run the 400 metres as flat out as you can?
It felt horrible. 400 metres, I still think it's the worst event to run because it's lactic acid. It's just flat out all the way around. And I suppose I got to meet my hero in 1996. Michael Johnson, won the 200 and 400 gold double at both 96 Olympics and the 2000. And at a camp, I got to ask him a question, and my question was, does it make you feel sick at the start of a 400 metres? And he goes, no. On a race day, I've only got to run 1. In training, I've got to run multiple. So I look forward to race days. And then he said the quote, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that sort of stuck with me. So since that day, I just trained, getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And that sort of, as you see through the book, I do that multiple times,
So that's been the sort of thing that's driven you the most, that belief that, driving yourself to feel uncomfortable, eventually you will get comfortable with what it is you've achieved.
Yeah, well, no, I suppose it's, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. You got to put yourself in the red zone consistently, and then you'll achieve. So if you find yourself getting comfortable, then you got to keep pushing a bit harder. And it worked really well for my athletics all the way up until I broke a leg and probably was immature and blamed that for the reason I quit, which still annoys me today because I...
So you look back on that career with a little bit of fondness and a little bit of regret?
Exactly. I had the talent there and I didn't have the maturity to push on with it, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. The 400 metres was the event that you were most successful at first, but your trainer took you over to have a look at the pole vault one time, and you were quite excited. Can you describe what it was like that first time you tried the pole vault?
It was just exhilarating, I guess. Coming from just basically sprinting and then trying pole vault, even though the first couple of times you don't go very high, but I was trying so hard to make the national championships for running, and then on my first competition for pole vault I qualified for the national championships. So that was a bit of a relief, well, not a relief, but a bit of excitement because I'd finally qualified, and then I must be good at something here. I can use the speed and work on that, and then that's where it went.
For most people, the pole vault is an incredibly technical event. Can you describe for us what it takes to have the courage to be able to run down that runway and leap almost 4 to 5 metres in the air?
Yeah. I suppose it doesn't, you don't just come in and jump 5 metres. It takes years and years of working up to it, and you start with stiff poles, but you got to learn how to bend them. And I suppose by the time you're jumping over 5 metres, you're pretty competent. But yeah, I suppose the biggest fear is when you're on a brand new pole that you've never used before, and they come in all different flexes and and strengths. But standing up there, conditions are good, and now you've pulled a pole out of the bag that you haven't used before, and you know, if you're a little bit off where you want to take off, it can end in disaster. And either way, if you get too close, it can be terrible. If you get too far out, it can be terrible. So yeah, I suppose it is exhilarating when you get it right. But yeah, you get some good injuries when you get it wrong.
You never felt anything other than that you were going to achieve the goal on the runway? Was there ever a time you thought you started to doubt yourself?
Oh, absolutely. You go through peaks and troughs. It's not unusual for pole vaulters to come in at a height and no height, which means you miss your first 3 attempts. And it's a very technical event, and that still happens to world-class athletes every now and then. So yeah, there are times, and you know, I remember a national championships where everyone had gone out before I'd even started, and all I had to do was jump a bar and I've won the gold. And I missed the first 2 attempts, and that third attempt was extremely nerve-wracking, and I just had to...
The pressure was on.
Yeah, the pressure was on because you look like an idiot. But sometimes it's hard to jump lower bars because they're so low, and you can...
How did that feel, that pressure, that moment of pressure?
I remember running in thinking, you've done this a billion times, and it was just the most blankest jump. I didn't try to do anything. I just tried to use the training to get me over it, and luckily enough, it did.
So there was experience and there was focus on what it was you were achieving right then and there. Elite athletes talk about that focus, that being in the moment. Can you describe for us what that was like?
Yeah, well, I guess that one, I suppose, I just switched off mentally, and it still turned out okay. In the book, I know, you know, I talk about growing up with Steve Hooker, and you know, we've got a photo of me and him and his medal there, and in 2010 he won the world championship with 1 jump, which that's in the moment, and that's elite. I don't look at myself at anything like that, so I don't know if I don't really feel comfortable using that term around pole vault.
It's something that you mentioned Steve Hooker. It's something you achieved as a junior, that you and Steve used to compete against each other.
Yeah.
And he after he won the gold, you had the opportunity to be competing against him again. You want to talk about how that felt?
Yeah. Well, we met up, had a beer, and had a look at his gold medal at a pub, and it was there and then. I said, "All right, you're the world champion. I've got to play. I've got to jump against you. Like, this is, you don't get a chance to play against Roger Federer when he's the best, or Tiger Woods when he's the best. I've got the opportunity. All I've got to do is set my mind to it, train, and qualify for the nationals, and it'll happen." So yeah, the next day, that was it. Made the decision. Went booked in the date for over in Perth, and qualified, and he got my ass kicked, but still got to do it though.
There's a photo in the book that you've included of that competition. Where your first jump, I think.
It was in the warm up.
In the warm up.
In the warm up. Yeah. And that's a perfect example of that, not getting it right, and straight up and straight back down. So not on the mat. So that's what happens when you have 6 years off and try to come back.
Right, but still there was that idea that you were able to achieve something, to set a goal and to achieve something, even if it was just being there competing against somebody who was now the world champion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you describe for us that first job that you got after school? And especially how you managed to get that job.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the first real job, the first job was working in a supermarket, but the first job, I suppose, that I would call, that I enjoyed, was at a radio station at Triple M, FAWQ FM, Triple M, same company in Melbourne and over Australia, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I rang them up and said, I want to drive the promotional cars, and they gave me a bit of a throwaway line. Yeah, just send in your resume. So when I was there, I said on the phone, I said, "Can you give me some more info?" And she's gone, "Just make it different. We get heaps of these." So I OCD mind, overthink everything. So I thought, how can I make this different? So I went and got a briefcase, and I got a little tape recorder, and in the tape, you'd open it up, you press the tape recorder and it'd have a little Mission Impossible recording. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to employ Anthony Hanna as a Triple M Rock Patrol. In that, it had my resume typed up as a mission statement, all these photos with my head circled, like a target. And yeah, it was quite unique.
You got the job.
Got the interview, got the job, and the rest is history. Yeah.
And there was a man you worked with there that you said taught you an awful lot about how to relate in public in performance.
Yep.
Dan Levy.
Dan Levi?
Yeah, Dan Levi.
He's I suppose he was like the promo king at the time. He was a few years older than me and was just directing me on how to deal with the public from different walks of life, to put it nicely, I guess.
Did that give you a lot of confidence in yourself? Because with the sort of condition that you had, there was a great deal of time where you had to perform certain events, certain things at a certain number of times in order to feel more comfortable. Yeah. Did Dan help you feel more comfortable in a public environment, speaking?
Yeah, probably. Just because he still is so good at relating to people and so good in that public space. So I suppose I just copied what he did and took on board a lot of how he spoke and how he dealt with people. But in terms of whether he knew my issues I was going through, I don't think anyone. I could have kept it a secret. Yeah.
So then you moved from Triple M Rock Patrol to the Victoria Police, and you started as probationary constable, but you were the first probationary constable in Victoria to be accepted into the Critical Incident Response Team. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think pretty sure that's the case. So normally you've got to do 2 years as a probationary constable, but there's a clause in the regulations that if you've got a special skill, you can be transferred to a specialist unit. So I made a deal with my boss that if I passed the cert course, he'll let me go as a probationary constable. And he sort of laughed and scoffed and said, well, they're not going to take a probationary constable. And but the deal was if I gave out enough tickets, the most in the station, he'd let me apply. Right. So that happened. I went and I hated giving out tickets, but but I did it because I sucked it up because I wanted to get on the course. And it just happened I got on the course, I passed the course, and they offered me a Reg 21. So I was off with, I'd only done 16 months of my probationary at a local station, and then I was in a tactical team.
A great deal of that is psychological assessment. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you managed that while having what many people would call a mental health condition?
Yeah, I suppose the psychological, if we're going to talk about psychological difficulty, I guess the negotiation course was harder than the cert course. But I suppose I just wasn't going to quit. It took me so long to get in the police force. There was no way I was going to quit anything. So I suppose I had that mentality that.
So again, it was goal setting, again, the determination. Yeah. You mentioned the negotiators course. Do you want to talk a little bit about the process of how you, first of all, how you wanted to get involved in the negotiating, what it was that committed you to go that way, and then the process of selection. It's a difficult selection.
Yeah, I suppose I was been a tactical operative for a while, and I would be on a cordon, surrounding the house in a bush or something, and I'd hear the negotiations going. And a lot of the time, you only hear one way. Whether it's because you're only hearing one end of the phone or one person yelling the other person through a phone or something. So I always wanted to know what was going on, probably a bit of a sticky nose. And then one of my sergeants said, you're not too bad, maybe you should have a crack at, doing the negotiators course. We got on the course. It's fair to say not too many people want to do it because it's very mentally demanding, the course. It's actually pretty horrible, really. You do a psych assessment, and a psychologist writes a report on your personality type, and then what what triggers would probably tick you off. And then it's just an attack for 2 weeks to see how you go. And they,
You got through that. And you write in the book that you briefly mentioned the fact that because you had been treated by psychologists and you had read quite a deal about psychology, you found it easier to cope with that. Do you want to talk about
I think I got teased a fair bit as a kid as well because I had a big cocoa, which was a big mole on my face.
Big mole on your face.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that in the book too. So I suppose that probably got me a thicker skin as well, and I started to learn that words can't really hurt you, and that's a big reason why I've written this book as well. I suppose I worked out that it's all a game. The whole, and I worked out that from the CERT course, and I worked it out from the this is all a game. It's all, they're all just trying to test you, seeing if they can break you. So I suppose I saw it like that, but there's no doubt the study I'd done previously and the experience I'd been through, I was able to handle it.
The first negotiating incident you were involved with was quite successful, and it was quite a surprise to the police who'd been negotiating with the young girl for quite some time. And you talked her down in, about 15 minutes?
Oh, not even. Yeah, probably 10 minutes. Yeah, it was a girl that was threatening suicide by jumping off an overpass to some train tracks. Local police were talking to her for a long time, and I was able to get up there, and first things first is just try and find some common ground. And I realised that she had some responsibilities with a cat that needed to be fed, and if she didn't feed the cat, then she wouldn't be taking her own life, she'd be taking the cat's life too. So I sort of, painted the picture that that's not very fair, and had it down in about 10 minutes. And the local police thought it was pretty amazing. They asked me what I'd said, and I just told them it was a negotiated magic. So that was a good start to the career, one down with under 10 minutes.
So that ability to be able to listen to the other person and to find the thing that they were most connected or most cared about or most loved seems to be the reason why you were so successful as a negotiator.
I guess so, and I think, no doubt because of my history with mental illness, I understand where they're coming from, and even though OCD, I suppose you don't really hear voices. I think you sort of get thoughts, and I think that's what people mean, and I understand what they're talking about. And then I did a lot of training, like personally with different types of psychology courses and all that kind of stuff to get a better understanding. So I think, and you're right, listening is probably the main thing, and showing the empathy and stuff like that. But that seemed to be the best way.
That's that word that you just used, the empathy, is probably the most important word when it comes to understanding a person who is going through an extremely difficult period of time. You've also had your very difficult times. Is there a person that has shown you a great deal of empathy that you would like to, that you most like to refer to?
Probably my wife, a little bit, if that's who you're sort of talking to. She's shown me empathy at times, and she's also told me to pull my socks up and give me a kick up the bum at times too. So, we've had our challenges and on both sides, but
And there were times when there was a time that you talk about in the book as a negotiator that you almost lost one person that came down, and that rocked you very badly. And it was Nicole who helped you through that. Was that a reason for you to find something else to hang on to, that connection? That connection with Nicole, that connection, that empathy that she showed, that gives you a purpose to keep going.
Yeah, I guess so, definitely. And I was lucky enough that Nicole was in the same job, so she understood what I was going through. That job in particular was girl that jumped out of a tree and hung herself. We're able to save her, which was good. But it was more of a I suppose if you didn't have a partner in the police force, it'd be hard for them to understand that scenario.
So it's a sense of understanding. Yeah. And in your book, you seem to be taking the same point of view, that what you really want is for people to understand what it was what you went through, to have empathy with you, perhaps even some sympathy.
Yeah, I suppose I don't. For me personally, not really. I don't really care really too much what people think. That's part of. Otherwise, why would you write a book like this? But I suppose I probably would rather it for so people who are suffering with OCD to go, someone gets what I'm going through, because it seems like there's not much out there. So in terms of the average punter, it's probably more for the person that may be suffering it.
Yeah. So there's a great deal of anxiety associated with it too. And you reached a period of time when you moved up to Brisbane and started working at the aviation fire and rescue.
Yep.
You reached a period of time where things were starting to spiral down in your life, and you became quite anxious.
Yep.
Do you want to just talk about how you sort of moved your way out of that?
Yeah, so I've been in Brisbane for about 3 years at the time, and I was probably homesick. We had 2 kids under 2. My wife was having bad health issues, and I suppose I wanted to go back to policing, just to what I knew. I probably had too much time to think in the current job. I started to get really depressed and really anxious. So I decided the only thing that was really working for me was just to start doing some vigorous exercise. So I started running, and then ran a little further, decided to run a marathon. And when you run a marathon, the last sort of 10 kilometres are horrible, and you go into a dark place.
Comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And Michael Johnson.
And it's 15 minutes after finishing the marathon, I wanted to go back there. I wanted to go back to that dark place where you strip yourself down to who you really are and what you're really made of, and that's addictive for some reason for me, which sounds probably a bit weird.
Not really.
Not really. Yeah, you want to cry, but you want to walk, but you don't want to give up, and you show your true colours.
Yeah.
So character building.
Yeah.
So I signed up for the next one, did another one, and just so happened that I got pneumonia and had to pull out, and so I thought, all right, well, I can't run for a while, perhaps I'll do some push-ups. And when I was doing the push-ups, I started doing them more and started doing 1,000 a day, and I realised that when I was doing them, to do that consistently, you had to give yourself an internal pat on the back, like, you can do this, you did it yesterday, you can do this. And that positive talk was probably the only positive talk I was having, because everything else I thought was shit because I was depressed. Everything was crap. So then I continued doing push-ups and used that self-talk, and then the penny finally dropped that now I know what they mean by, what's the term? Thinking positive. Yeah. I'd never really got what they meant by that, but now it's like, all right, thinking positive. If I can go give myself a pat on the back for other things outside exercise, that's how I can start thinking positive. And that's basically what happened. My mood increased when I was running, my mood increased when I was doing push-ups, and I've finally worked out that, all right, that's how I've got to live the rest of my life. I've got to do something where I have to give myself a pat on the back continuously, otherwise I'll start spiralling down again.
And it was when you started that process of thinking positive that you decided to start writing.
Yeah. Well, I suppose I'd started writing before, but I'd sort of hit a few roadblocks. And then, as I started, thinking positive, I could get more creative and get the words on the page and make it happen. And,
So you've now got the book, and the book is now published. It's available on Amazon.
Yep.
And there'll be a hardcover book coming out.
Yep.
What has that made you feel about yourself? The process of that writing, has that built a better Anthony?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's definitely, for anyone that wants to write a book, it's a bit more to it than I expected. there's a few, and you hit a few hurdles, and but absolutely, I'm proud that I finished it. And I suppose a few months ago I probably would have cared what people thought about it, but I don't really care anymore. It's about just having it done and completed it. And, so yeah, it's definitely made a better me. It's it's an achievement, whether it's good or not. That's a different story.
It's certainly an achievement, and as you said, it's something that you really wanted to share, because not many people understand that even with a mental health issue, you can still live a positive and successful life, or perhaps even because of it.
Yeah, that's it. And I think so many people hide behind maybe a label, and they go, "Oh, I can't do this because I'm depressed," or "I can't do this because I'm that," and I think that's a bit of crap. Yeah. So I wasn't going to, you got to work it to your advantage. So that's what I've tried to outline in the book, that if you've got something like OCD, it can make you very dedicated and work really hard towards something. And throughout the book, I've put that process into place, and that's how I've been able to win national medals, go to the police force, get into the fire service, go overseas with the firefighters calendar, write a book. It's the same process, just reapplied.
It's like you quote from the film Extraction,
yes,
the latest film, and you quote that one of the characters there says that it's not being pushed into the river that drowns you, it's being submerged in it.
That's right. Yeah.
So if you allow the diagnosis to overwhelm you, then you can't set positive goals.
That's it.
So is that your life now you see as positive, but there will still be times to manage? Is that?
Yeah, you always got to worry about that kind of stuff.
You're always vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the support network and the being able to share that story. I think that has given you confidence, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Being able to share it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And hopefully it's the start of a new chapter. Doing something a little bit different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another goal.
Second book's on the way.
So you're already planning a second book?
Yeah. It's underway.
Excellent. All right. So, thank you, Anthony Hanna, for sharing your story with us.
No worries. Thank you.